We start in Zambia and the town of Kabwe, which for decades has lived with the toxic legacy of its colonial mining past. Today, it's considered one of the most contaminated places on Earth. Its soil, its water, even its children poisoned by lead. The UN has described Kabwe as a sacrifice zone, an area where residents face serious human rights violations due to pollution. Up to 200,000 people have been affected. And after years of quiet suffering, they're fighting back with a class action lawsuit against the mining giant they blame for generations of harm. The mine here has been closed for decades, but the pollution persists. It's why children in the region have some of the highest blood lead levels in the world. DW Special Correspondent Mariel Muller reports.
Jane Nalengo first sensed something was wrong when she sent her daughter to get salt from the shop, but Elizabeth came back with cooking oil. Soon it began to affect the 6-year-old at preschool.
She would forget what she had been taught. Teachers said she didn't understand the lessons. So I thought it's better not to waste money and take her out of school for now and maybe enroll her later again.
Jane took Elizabeth to the clinic. The level of lead in her blood was 58 micrograms per deciliter. Anything above 45 micrograms requires medical treatment, according to the WHO. The doctor said Elizabeth had low red blood cell levels, anemia caused by lead poisoning.
I felt so bad. When her father asked about the diagnosis, I couldn't answer right away. I broke down in tears, then explained that her high blood lead levels were causing her low blood count.
Kabwe was contaminated by a lead and zinc mine set up during the British colonial period. It left children in the area with what the United Nations says are some of the highest blood lead levels in the world. The mine continued operating until 1994, but lead dust from uncovered waste still affects around 200,000 people, according to Human Rights Watch. Small-scale mining continues at the site even today and exacerbates the problem. A class action lawsuit against mining company Anglo-American is seeking compensation on behalf of affected children and women of childbearing age and an environmental cleanup. The claim is that between 1925 and 1974, Anglo-American played a key role in the mine's technical, medical, and safety operations. Anglo-American says it did not own or operate the mine and provided only technical advice to those who did. The Zambian government took over the mine in 1971 and led operations there after 1974. It has acknowledged the need for comprehensive remediation, but Human Rights Watch says it has not done much. The government is not part of the lawsuit. Matthias Chatabankner says he worked at the Kabwe mine for more than 30 years, right up until it closed in 1994. He was a lab analyst. His job was to test samples of lead and other minerals to determine their quality.
Sometimes the plant was covered with smoke, heavy smoke. And that heavy smoke contained a lot of lead.
He often suffered severe constipation, weakness, memory loss and stomach pains.
I can't explain you. If I continue explaining, you see my tears coming down. We are put in dangerous position, some of us.
Lead is still in the air, soil and water, more than 3 decades after the mine closed. Such contamination is especially damaging to children. Jane knows the water she gives Elizabeth to drink is probably harming her, but she has nothing else.
Sometimes she wakes up weak, and I feel very bad when I think of how the whites at the mine caused the whole problem of lead contamination here in our country. My heart is in pain because of this.
She hopes the lawsuit will give her the means to move somewhere else, away from the home that's making them sick.
Joining us now from Nairobi is Alan Ngare, Africa Advocacy Director at Human Rights Watch. Alan, you've heard the stories from mothers in Kabwe struggling to care for children whose brains have been permanently damaged due to lead contamination. What about these stories stays with you most?
For me, Kabwe is one of the clearest examples of environmental injustice in the world today. Having been to Kabwe myself and engaging with mothers, with children, giving really harrowing stories of developmental challenges, cognitive development challenges specifically. So these are the most heartbreaking stories that one sees and hears when you go to Kabwe. It's the human stories themselves that really touch you.
We've seen reports that suggest the mining company's own experts warn that children in Kabwe were getting sick and dying from lead poisoning, and yet nothing was done to protect them. This whole contamination process started back in the colonial era, but are there guardrails still not in place today that could make another Kabwe possible?
I think the challenge with Kabwe is you have a country, Zambia, that has laws that are not being enforced, corporations that are getting away with harm that has been done to the people of Kabwe over a number of years. As you know, there is an ongoing case in South Africa related to the Anglo company that was mining from the colonial days. And ultimately, they sold the mine then to another entity. And the difficulty is that the corporation has benefited over the years from mining zinc, but unfortunately, lead is also one of the materials that was mined out of there, and the dumping of lead right next to the mine, and subsequently it's affecting the water, the soil, the air in Kabwe. That's the problem, and that the laws and regulations at present are not sufficient to address the challenges from these corporate actions.
You say that the laws there are not set up in a way that you can sufficiently address those issues. Do you see those conditions being replicated in other parts of Africa? Could another Kabwe happen in other parts of the continent?
Definitely. I think one of the challenges that we see with business and human rights and corporate accountability is in many African countries, we actually call it the race to the bottom, which is that African states would lower their standards, would lower laws and standards and procedures in order to attract investment from the outside. This is quite rampant in the continent, where each country is trying to itself as competitive or more competitive than the other by lowering these standards. I can give you examples of Ghana, for example, where the Galamsey are using chemicals, mercury in mining for gold, and in the process of that, further environmental damage happens. And yet, the laws have not been set up in such a way that they would be enforceable against corporations, particularly those that are not housed or those that are not registered on the African continent and in the specific countries that they are operating.
I was struck by something I saw in your report at Human Rights Watch. Apparently, decades of mining and smelting operations have resulted in an estimated 6.4 million tons of lead-bearing waste piles. What's happening to these piles, and what's the danger?
So Human Rights Watch has documented, a lot of the uncovered lead waste in the residential area in Kabwe. When you think about a pencil, when we use a pencil to write, that the lead, what we actually use, that color, that is really the color that this mountain is. It's a black mountain, literally. And what's happening is that it's been hipped over the years, but as you can imagine, there's all sorts of weather conditions, wind and rain, and it moves this dust and it moves this lead. It infiltrates the environment, the soil. It gets into the water system. And this finds its way then into people's homes, either through the drinking water or the crops themselves that are growing in soil that is contaminated. And so this has, this is why we say that the blood lead levels are quite high. And unfortunately, this also has an impact on mothers or pregnant women. Children start getting infected or affected by lead in utero.
Is there any realistic way to prevent similar environmental disasters from happening again in Africa?
Absolutely. Authorities in Africa must halt unsafe mining practices. I think we have sufficient normative frameworks to do this. It's the implementation that is a challenge, and ensuring that they are enforced at all levels, whether it's environmental or health standards, but also just centering the people in decision making. It's all well and good to have development happening in African countries, but if you do not involve the people and fully understand the impact of these business activities, then ultimately what we'll be doing is sacrificing communities for pecuniary purposes.
Alan Ngari, Human Rights Watch, thank you.
Thank you.
Anglo American did send us a statement. In it, they highlight again that the allegations date back more than 50 years when they say they only had, quote, indirect minority shareholding of 10% in the company that operated the mine, Zambia Broken Hill Development Company Limited, today known as ZCCM. And then they go on to say, we have every sympathy for the people of Kabwe, the pollution the town experiences, and any harm that may have come from it. Contamination is not acceptable anywhere.